Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for our discussion about this very important film, Represent. We are very excited tonight because we have one of the participants in this movie with us this evening. So we're going to get to a discussion with her, but first we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. As you can see on your screen, the meeting is being recorded, so we can watch it later. Hope that's okay with everyone. Hold on. I can't do anything. This always happens to me. If you're not a league member, we hope you will consider joining the league. You can visit our website. We have over 20 local leagues in Connecticut at lwvct.org. That too. What we do is we basically are a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We influence public policy through education and advocacy. So this film, very important film. Okay, Rachel has the screen on. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of it today, people. All right, so the description of the film, it is in the heart of the American Midwest. Three women take on entrenched political systems in their fight to reshape local politics on their own terms. Equal parts personal and political, Represent is a documentary by Hilary Batchelder that follows three women on both sides of the aisle who share the singular goal of improving their community through public service. Represent takes a bipartisan approach, exploring systemic bias on both sides of the aisle and challenging audiences to identify with complicated, passionate women across the political spectrum. The film subverts stereotypes and explores the nuances within the issue of representation, whether it's a progressive rural farmer, a conservative woman of color, or a politically engaged millennial. Our main subjects exist in a space outside the typical demographic boxes. Our special guest tonight is Myya Jones, one of the three women featured in the film. And she was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Myya Jones is a proud product of the Detroit public school system by way of Lewis Cass Technical High School, alumni of Michigan State University, and a 2021 graduate of Wayne State University's Mike Ilitch School of Business. In her years of activism, she has used her many platforms and music to spark dialogue concerning marginalized groups and how they can acquire resources to advance their communities. In doing so, she has given people of color, women, and millennials the inspiration to impact change. Currently, she works for Google and leads many initiatives that have given Detroiters and Black businesses access to free resources provided by Google. This includes over $1 million in ad grants to nonprofits that progress Black and Brown people. Welcome, Myya. Thank you for being here.
Everyone, thanks for having me. I don't know, do you want me to start? I know you just had my bio, so I don't know if you want me to do a background on myself.
Whatever you'd like to discuss. I think one of the questions that we had for you is how you got so active at such a young age. I mean, I know that, you know, in the film, how old are you in this film? You're like 23?
No, I was 22. So first of all, excuse me how I'm talking. I have invisible liners in that I just got last week, so I'm getting used to learning how to talk in them. So yes. Excuse me first.
No worries.
If my mouth looks weird. But so when I was 22 is when I first ran for mayor, but I decided to run when I was 21. And when I was in Washington, D.C., I was an intern for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation under Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, who's retiring this year. And that's when I got my first stint of politics for real, like government politics. But I was actually very immersed in student government in school, but I didn't really think it was a real thing. I thought it was just you join these student groups, you ensure that I was always active in student groups growing up. So I thought it was just another thing to do. But then I quickly realized while I was in Congress interning that a lot of the things we did in college, like policy implementation, organizing, and advocacy was actually a part of what people do in the regular world, except for we were way more efficient and effective in student government because we got policies passed that actually benefited students at the school. And then we had a way of being more partial because students, I feel like when you're younger, it's we know the right thing to do and we're less, I don't want to say corrupt, but a little bit less corrupt than people who are in the actual politics. And then a lot of us want to like do the right thing. And sometimes it takes us having conversations to really understand how certain things hinder other groups and how we can come together to really collaborate and make policies that best progress all people. That's just like a skill and thing that you have to really work on through having conversations and then understanding people have disagreements. So in a nutshell, I really got started when I went to college. I'm the first generation college graduate. And I went to college just to simply go to business school. I wanted to come back home, help my parents with their businesses and help their businesses grow. But then I soon found myself being one of the few Black people in the program, Eli Bro at Michigan State, and how a lot of times when funding was cut, the funding was cut that really helped people who were of color, who didn't necessarily get into the college or any program. A lot of times students who were of color, and I'm specifically talking about Black students right now, we were always defaulted to like the interdisciplinary studies colleges or the, what's the other one that it was? It was like two different colleges that didn't necessarily have concentrations or ways that help you get into like grad school. So say, for example, if you want to be a doctor, you're in the Drew Scholars program, or if you want to be an engineer, where I was the RA, you're in the engineering program. We didn't really have avenues that helped us get into the colleges that we wanted to get into, and we were almost always, a lot of students never got into the actual colleges. So for a while, I didn't get into the business college. I had to appeal it because I didn't have adequate resources to really help me get through those classes. And a lot of times our tutoring programs were cut. A lot of people who come from first gen or homes that are have low income can't necessarily afford tutoring, right? So having those programs cut did not help us at all. So that's the kind of work that I did on campus. And also too, I was on a sexual assault and advisory committee when I was there as well. I worked with our courts and cops groups, so this Council of Racial and Equity. I worked with our vice presidents and our president a lot to really implement policies. I was on homecoming court. I used that as an avenue to get things for students too. So I just used whatever platform I could use to like be vocal about issues. I knew the school never wanted to look bad. So I had a way of getting in positions to where I could like make noise, I called it. And then when I did that, a lot of things got passed a lot faster. They found ways to fix stuff that could have been fixed beforehand. So for me, it's always been about how can I get myself in a position that causes influence, where I can use it to cause influential change for other people and myself. So that's how I got involved, and didn't want to be in politics. Actually, that was not my thing, but it just seemed like being like a Black woman. And then also being young, I always see how important it was for me to not just advocate for myself, but other people. But specifically for me, if I don't advocate for me, nobody else is going to advocate for me. Nobody else is going to make sure that I have the resources I need to really progress. So it's just always important for me to just speak up when I need to. And again, not just for me, but for everybody too. I feel like I'm less scared or fearful to other people to like cause noise and aggravate systems to make change. So
did you have mentors that helped you along the way, or what kept you going? Because in the film it's pretty clear that you have a lot of challenges to deal with. I mean, lots of things, including the lack of funding, which is always a challenge for a candidate. So who are your mentors, and how did you were they, I mean, go ahead, tell me, who are your mentors, as far as were they inside your family, outside your family, or how did that work for you?
So a lot of people who I looked up to are always on TV. So that was kind of interesting for me. I didn't really have, like, again, nobody in my family went to college before me. Nobody in my family actually traveled even like outside of Detroit a lot before me. So I was honestly paving my own way. And how I did that is through influential people that I saw on TV, from like the Fresh Prince to Cosby Show, or like even cartoons. Like I just took characters and I said, okay, this is kind of work or life that I would like to live. How do I get to that? But while I was in college, that was another thing too. When I was in college, I was kind of a rebel. So I would always do things that they had like a path always laid out for student. You do this internship, that, and you get here, you get a job, and you go about your life. But for me, it was like, I don't want to just do that. I want to try like everything. And I used to get in trouble for, which is kind of weird to me, because I got in trouble for being curious and trying new things. And then the advisors, because I didn't just do the straight path like everyone else did, used to give me a lot of slack for it. But I'm like, what's the issue with me trying this, like, summer program at UT Austin, Texas for Arabic so I can learn a second language? What's the issue with me trying to become an RA and also, join my sorority that's really heavily involved in the political realm? Like everyone knows who Delta Sigma Theta is, and Delta Sigma Theta is very involved in politics, and we have a lot of elected officials too, and our values really align with me, so I joined my sorority. I used to ask questions like, what is the issue with me doing all, I have a summer program with Google. And then it came to me, like, even after that, I ended up, I work at Google now. And if I had not put myself in the position to really try different things, I would not be where I am now. And even to this day now, the advisors, they used to always call me back to come speak to students, but it's like, you want me to come speak now, but when in the process of me like breaking these, walls and doing all this things that were different, I got a lot of slack for doing different things. But a lot of students used to say like, oh my God, you're always trying something new. Oh my God, you're always doing stuff like that's so great. I wish I could do it. I'm like, you can do it too. But people were so caught up in what the advisors wanted. So again, so who were my mentors? I actually had one mentor who was a part of the National Black Association of Black Accountants, National Association of Black Accountants that I was a part of. And she was 3 or 4 years older than me. I can't remember right now. And we're her still close to this day. And she never, like, she will always tell me, like, what the advisors, because she was one of the advisors for the program too, like how I would like, yeah, what they don't want you to do that, but do it if you want to do it anyway. So she would encourage me to keep doing stuff. And what honestly motivated me was proving people wrong. I know people don't admit that sometimes, but when they would tell me like, oh, don't do this and don't do that, it was like, but this is actually going to be good for me. So why wouldn't I try? Like college is the place to try. They always say college is the place where you could try everything and fail. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to figure out what actually do I like, what I don't like. So I felt like if I did the same intern with the same company every single summer, I would never truly understand work that I would want to do and work that I wouldn't want to do. So through all of my experience, what I realized is that one thing that I love to do is advocacy work. Like even when I had my accounting internship, my favorite part of my rotation was with the, I wouldn't even say the HR people because they weren't HR people, but they were the HR people. Like I love to do work that really brought people joy, that helped people out. And that's where I always found myself as doing that type of work. So if it wasn't for the different experiences I had to where I realized I didn't like accounting, I didn't want to get an accounting degree, I didn't like finance, I didn't want a finance degree, but those things were always pushed on me to do. I wouldn't ever knew that the work that I did outside of my classwork, again, the student government work, being president of the Black Student Alliance or being president of the Black Greek Council, where we did a lot of policy work too, that was the kind of work that I was going to help me run for office in the future. Because again, when you're doing that work, you don't realize, or at least for me as a student, I didn't realize I was organizing. I didn't realize I was really writing policy. I didn't realize that I was collecting signatures for certain stuff, So that's what really helped me and grounded me on the work that I do now, is that foundational work when I was in college. And that was kind of all over the place with that, but it's like it's not a straight story. Because again, I didn't just like, oh, I want to be a politician one day. No, it was like I was doing the work, not knowing I was doing the work. And then when I got, in the CBCF, I realized like, oh my God, this work is what I've been doing for all these years and didn't even know I was doing it.
Right. It's really about building relationships with people, trying to get things done. And I think it's really interesting how you basically did what a lot of us have done throughout history. A lot of women have done throughout history. It's like well-behaved women don't make history. And by doing things, being nice and doing what people tell you, you're not going to have those experiences that are going to bring you forward and expand your view of things. So I think that's really fabulous that you had the guts and the courage, because you're a very brave person to do a lot of that stuff. Most people would not be that brave.
Yeah, I try to be, because we only have
that's really great.
So.
Now, when you ran your first campaign, in the movie, I noticed you basically did it out of your kitchen, it looked like. And how did you learn how to organize? Did you get some of that stuff from what you did in school, or was that something where you had to kind of take it to the next level to get anywhere?
So that was actually my second campaign, the state rep campaign. My first campaign was the Mayoral Campaign, and that was actually run out of my parents' house at first. So I ended up getting this office. It was a family friend that ended up becoming my godfather, family friend of my mother's deceased husband, who we grew up with. my aunt had actually, I guess, reached out and was like, my niece is doing this work and she's running for mayor. I want you to connect with her, blah, 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 blah. So we ended up meeting at the Democratic Convention 4 years ago when everything was in person. And she was like, are you Pandora's niece? Oh, well, I'm Bishop Herman Starks and I'm very involved, and she told me to meet you and everything. So he ended up having a connection that allowed me to have an office building. Because I don't know if I said this in the film, but I know Hillary knows this. But I remember at one point I was gonna quit, and I was just like, I can't do this campaign out of my parents' house. And I'm trying to remember, is that where I live? I did live with my parents then, because I had just got back from school, and I was running the campaign. I was trying to figure out where I was gonna live. I was definitely at my parents' house. Now, like, I can't keep doing the campaign at my parents' house. Like, and I'm not on the ballot, so this is stupid. Let me just, like, just throw in the towel. I didn't want to, but I was like, I just don't have the faith right now to continue this out of their home. And then Bishop pulled some connections, and I was able to, like, use someone's office space in Detroit. And that was, like, literally the saving grace to the campaign, because we had a place where we could meet with all the volunteers. And it just felt like more real than what it felt like. We made this office space that was like kind of like nothing and turned into this like whole thing. So that was really cool. Now the campaign out of the kitchen is my state rep campaign, and I had just got my apartment lease the end of that campaign, my first campaign. So that one was nice too, because I had my own space. So I was able to, like, use my living room, my kitchen space to have people and volunteers coming in and out of it. Everything that I learned, every campaign, I learned something different and something new, I feel like. And then every campaign, people even said this, like, every campaign you do, it just gets better and better and better, and you're doing this and you're doing that. So for my first
what's an example of what
I was going to give you examples from one.
Okay.
So from the first campaign, obviously I was on the ballot, right? So my first thing was, well, the state rep one was kind of easier because you just pay a fee and whatever, you're on the ballot. But from the first mayoral campaign to the second one, I didn't announce that I was running for office until I was on the ballot. And I was like, if I don't get on the ballot, I'm not doing it, obviously. But I want to just ensure that I'm one of the first people. And I was the first person to be certified on the ballot, because I got my signatures early. I was out there, and it was, again, still pre-COVID. I mean, not pre-COVID, still like COVID going on in the wintertime. So I had to be very strategic on how I got signatures. I was in the liquor stores that's by my house. They let me set up shop there to where I got a bunch of signatures, just trying to figure out, okay, so how can I best get this done quickly, so that I can make sure that I can start advertising, because it's still COVID. I know a lot of people are not, like, they don't want people coming to their homes and everything. That's the first thing from that campaign to the next one. Another thing is, like, branding. I've always been really good with branding, but it was just making sure that my image, because Detroit is a very weird place to run for office. I'll tell you that right now. And that's part of a question that y'all that I want to answer too, is like, I ran for office so many times because Detroit is a really name recognition place. I don't have a family that's been in politics, and a lot of people who are in office or continue to stay in office are either people who have a long history of political power in their families, so their name is well known. So if you see a last name, like, so for example, Jones, people assume that I'm related to Brenda Jones, who was our city council president, right? So that kind of stuff.
Work for you. You got to make that stuff work for you.
They know I'm not related to her. But say, for example, if they were to see it, like, oh, that's her, I'm gonna vote for her. Or like Kavanaugh is a popular name because the Kavanaughs are very involved in politics. But I basically have to make a name for myself. I keep my name out there and constantly campaigning, even if I don't win. So people, again, who family aren't involved in politics, they have to do the same thing. So you have people who have ran for office for 10 years and then finally get elected. But it took so long because, again, Detroiters don't really care. We don't hold politicians accountable because we're so used to politicians failing us. So what we know is name recognition. So what I've been doing basically is establishing myself as like a household name in Detroit, and it's been working out. Although people see, like, from the outside, oh, she's running and losing. No, if you look at my numbers get bigger and bigger every time. And from my previous campaign for mayor, I was a top woman candidate in the race, and I was the youngest candidate. And I don't remember how much money I raised compared to other people, but you had the mayor who was first, the deputy mayor who was with Kwame Kilpatrick second, this man named I forgot his name, but he's been counted, but he's ran for mayor since 1985, and he has not won yet. And then you had me, yeah, and then you had me. So it was like, it was just shocking to all of us, because we're like, you have all these three men who have all this power and have been doing all this stuff, and then this young lady and everybody else, because the work that I've been putting in to really galvanize like all of these people to just really believe in me. Now, again, it's still a lot of work to do. But again, from every campaign, I'm just learning more and more. Like you said earlier, ask people for money. That's not one of my strong suits. I literally went through a lot of my savings, putting money into my campaigns. Like a lot of my own personal money goes into my campaign, because I just hate not even just asking for money, but people don't typically believe in you when you're young. You're trying to hold these high positions of power. So it's like the money don't just come flowing in because of that. So for me, it was like, I basically kind of self-funded a lot of all three of my campaigns with my own funds. But something else that I've learned through campaigning is you go all in and you don't. Every single campaign I've ran on my own. I've done my own like financial reports, which sometimes are wrong, but at least I tried and I'll fix them. And then I did my own, like, again, branding. I outsource what I can. I think I built 2 of 3 of my websites. My second one I outsourced to someone, but the last one I built myself. And it just taught me like different skills. Like if you don't have the money to pay people, you got to figure out and learn how to do it. So that takes time. So again, you have to be like very dedicated and like really, I guess, wanted to really like, in Detroit, at least in Michigan, solidify yourself as someone who's serious about this. And that's what people know about me now, is that I'm really serious about it. I always show up, I'm always involved. So like, I'm one of the future political leaders. I'm making these faces because it's just like, oh my God, y'all, like, why does it always have to be like, why don't you want me to be 40 years old before I get elected into office? I don't really understand it, but that's just how it works here. So we'll see what happens.
Are you thinking of running again at some point in the future?
I've been going back and forth about that. So, we just got our new district. So we just, with the census and the redistricting here in Michigan, our district lines are really interesting.
Were they gerrymandered and all? And who runs Detroit now? What party has the power in Detroit?
It's been switched over to like Democrats. It's kind of almost 50-50, but I think Democrats still have the majority in the House. Okay, so for Detroit, sorry, our city government is nonpartisan. We don't have Democrats or Republican. Everything's nonpartisan. No.
How does that work?
That's how our charter was drawn. You just
okay.
Yeah, that's whoever you are, if you want to run for office, you just get the signatures that's required, and then you get on the ballot. And then for city council, we have 7 city council people. So you have 2 at large and 5 districts people. It's 7 or not, I always forget. But anywho, the thing is, everything's nonpartisan. So you don't run on either ticket. But for our state elections, those are partisan.
Right.
So for that, Democrats still are, Detroit is majority Democratic, so that's never really a thing here. But now it's a lot of the state rep districts. That's the biggest thing right now, is the state rep districts and the congressional districts. We lost a congressional seat, which is the 14th, and now it's a district in Detroit. So Detroit basically had the 14th and the 13th district, and now they basically are both kind of combined. So we kind of like lost a seat in the state. And then 2, with the state rep seats, they were gerrymandered before. Mm-hmm. And now I thought they gerrymandered to where now Democrats can't win. based on how it's a whole lawsuit going on still, but I don't think the lawsuit's going to go through. But like, for example, my parents' house now, for the state house seat, where I'm technically still registered to vote at, it used to just be like Detroit, a big slab of just Detroit. Now it's like Detroit, and it goes out into like the suburbs, like Royal Oak, Berkeley, even Clawson, Michigan, and then Birmingham, Michigan. And I feel like those areas are sometimes, well, they have to be majority Democratic, because the person who was in that seat, who's running now for that district that she falls in, she's a Democrat, Regina Wise, who won. And she had like a big part of that area, but now it like stretches further down into Detroit. It's two different kind of groups though. So they say that the purpose of doing that was like to have like a diverse, I don't know. I have a thing with jury and representing certain groups of people or different types of people, because a lot of people here don't know how to effectively govern different type of folks. That's the best way I can put it.
Right, we have that in Connecticut too, where we have the cities and then they'll do a redistrict carve out. So they have a little slice of suburb of this suburb or that suburb to kind of mix it up a little bit. But I think it's very difficult because it makes sense that it should be like neighborhoods should stay together and whatever. But I think that because they, especially if there's only like Connecticut we have 5 House districts, that's it. I think we lost one. Anyway, not this time around, but it gets confusing because it's done, our system is done, by the politicians. I mean, from both parties, but they both kind of help each other out. I'll take this one, you take that one. So it's still this kind of process that's kind of done not as transparently as most of us would like, unfortunately.
So this time around, I don't know if you want to keep talking about this, but this is like this is part of the political thing that happened that I'm very involved in, that I'm very vocal about. This time around, they had a whole board of the redistricting committee. Instead of the politicians doing it, we had to vote or they had to appoint these people for the redistricting stuff. So that kind of helped, and then people voted on which map they wanted. But again, I'm not too sure this go around, because it's going to last like, I think 10 years at least, maybe 20, who knows. But I don't know how people are going to be able to effectively govern folks who now have part of Detroit and some of the surrounding suburbs. That's my biggest concern right now. And again, I thought about running, but next week's a deadline, so I gotta figure out fast. But,
get on that.
We'll see.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions. Is that okay? We have some questions already coming in. This question is from Amanda Cordano. Does Michigan not have a citizens election fund that can help with campaign funding? Connecticut has. We have a citizens election program fund that especially first-time candidates can use. Do you guys not have that in Michigan?
We have some kind of fund that governor candidates can use. I've never seen, there's no fund for like other offices. Like, for example, I don't know if you all heard of like Abdul, when he ran against Gretchen Whitmer. I know Gretchen, our governor now. I've noticed like when they campaign, they say like, oh, if you donate this much by this time frame, it can get matched or something, but not for like local lower elections. So whatever fund or election fund we have is not for lower candidates, just for, I guess, the gubernatorial candidates. But I'll have to do more research for that. But again, like I've noticed with their campaigns, they'll say like, donate this much before this deadline so it can get matched by whatever it gets matched with.
It's kind of interesting they don't have it for local candidates, because that's usually where you have to start, right? I mean, you don't just start at Senate, most people anyway. Okay, if people have more questions, you can put them in the chat. And hope you have more questions for Myya. It's been great to have some talk time with you. That movie was so powerful. The thing that was so great about it, or not great, but interesting about it to me, was how much misogyny, how much sexism, how much ageism. There were so many isms in that movie on every level, against parents, against anybody who didn't have a typical traditional life, especially with funding. But definitely, did you feel, I mean, I'm sure you felt that way, but how as far as which ism was the one that was most distressing to you?
All of them. I can't even choose one. I brought that up in the, I believe I brought that up in the documentary. So obviously well, the top ones that I faced in Detroit was sexism first, then ageism, and then racism. So the sexism, and I put that one first because when I first ran for mayor, I don't know if people remember, there was another young candidate who was a year younger than me who ran for office. who was a male, and we used to have the same, and he's a close friend of mine now too, actually. So we discuss this all the time, and he knows that I was giving a lot of BS, and he admits that. But we would have the same questions basically asked from people in different interviews, and we'll give very similar answers. So I'm gonna give you an example of one. It was one like, how would you handle something with your or when you get elected into office? And we both gave the answer of like, we're supposed to have teams, right? You're supposed to appoint people who are educated and who are experts in their field. Like, I'm not a financial person, so obviously I would handle, hire a financial person to cover city finances, or get a lawyer for corporate counsel. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so why would I be over, anything legally with the states? Like, they give me the recommendations, they do the research, and I make an educated decision based off of those information they present to me, right? So we both gave those answers, and then someone told me like, oh, if you don't have the answers and stuff, then maybe you shouldn't, run for office, because you're supposed to know this and you're supposed to know that. And then he had a very similar question, and he gave the same answer I did. And the person told him like, you are so wise, and that is so great that you answered it this way. And I tell you, I was livid. I was like, oh, so he's wise for talking about team and, teammates and whatever, and building a comprehensive or team that's smart. But when I said it, I'm just not ready or qualified, because I'm supposed to know all this stuff on my own. That's why I put sexism first. Then there's ageism, because obviously I was young, I was 22. And even after all my other campaigns, even like being 20, was that 26? Yeah, 26 last time running for mayor. Apparently I look like I'm 15 or 18. So I used to get like a lot of how do I want to describe these comments? Just demeaning comments about my age, especially on my yard signs, my picture. I was like, well, even if I was 18, like, shouldn't you be a little bit more impressed that I'm doing this at 18 years old and my literature is looking this great and my stances are looking this great? Like, should my age like dictate like how you feel about how I present myself? But then once I start talking to people, and even when I was 24, 22 and 23 campaigning, it was once I opened my mouth and started telling people about my stances and how I felt about different policy issues and how we can really progress the trade. And I said, oh, you really know what you're talking about. Maybe if you were a little bit older, I'm like, okay, so what's the difference between like me saying this now and me saying this when I'm like 30 years old? Again, like, people just have this thing to where specifically young women are not equipped to lead, young Black women, I'm gonna say specifically young Black women. So it's hard for us to really establish ourselves. But again, that's why I put ageism second. And then racism, I feel like I've always like, the mixture of being young and being a woman and being Black all together with the racism is where it comes into play, because people just automatically think like, you're a Black woman from Detroit, you're not educated, and you just don't know what you're talking about. And we need other folks to govern for us in order for us to really succeed. So that's another thing that I have to fight through every day, is people understanding that Black folks, we know how to govern ourselves. We know how to ensure that our people are progressing, because we've done that for centuries, decades, years, whatever you want to say about it. And the fact that people don't believe that we can govern ourselves, make sure our people progress, is just, in 2022, it's still sad. So
what would you tell young people today? Like, if you're in a high school and you're trying to impress upon them, what's the main thing that you want them to take away from your experience, that you can help them get a little bit ahead of what you've had to deal with?
I would let them know that, or I tell young people all the time, even today, like, this, unfortunately, we have a long way to go with our struggle and our fight towards like equity in our country. So don't get discouraged, because life is going to be hard regardless. There are going to always be problems to solve. There's going to always be conflict. There's going to always be something. What we or folks should focus on is understanding the problem and solve for the solution. And there's going to be plenty of solutions for one problem. But the important thing that I try to figure out is what is the solution that best works for everyone. Now, it's not going to always be 100% for everyone, but how can we ensure that everyone wins in some kind of way? Like, what is your negotiables and your non-negotiables, or what are other people's negotiables and non-negotiables? So I try to figure out too. And then that's how I try to like do everything as democratically as I can. Even in my personal life, like I practice this in my personal life too, not just in politics, but just making sure there's not just equality, but equity, because some folks might need a little bit more help than other folks too. Some people might be in better positions than folks where they don't need as much help. So how can we just think in ways that's for everyone and not just selfishly think like, oh, I just want to be, and these days we live on social media. I tell folks this all the time too. It's like, don't just do stuff for show, do it because you really want to make impact. So just showing up for a protest, it's good and it's cool, yeah, but there's a lot of work that goes into organizing protests. There's a lot of work that goes into the afterthought. Like, are you going to the school board meetings? Are you going to help pass out literature? Are you researching a policy that's supposed to be passed? Like, it can sound good on the outside, but they use a lot of wordplay to trick people into voting for certain stuff. So I try to just tell, again, young folks, like, solve for the problem. Life is going to be hard, and just don't give up. You have to be really resilient in this work, because you have to be resilient in anything, honestly. Life is just hard. So we allow not the small things, everything that's small. If we allow just the burdens to really dictate how we move, we won't really get far. Oh, and the top thing I've been telling young people these days is really take care of your physical and your mental health. They're both as equal. I know a lot of us, the world moves a lot faster than how it moved back in the day, because there was not a lot of technology to where we feel like things need to happen in an instant, because like it does now. So we think that things have to move fast, but we can like slow down a bit and ensure that we are making sure that we're taking pauses and breaks when we need to replenish ourselves and refresh ourselves, so that we're not overworking or creating these physical issues with our bodies due to stress and not taking care of ourselves. So we don't really understand, like when people say stress is a killer, I didn't really understand that until these past few years, because when I did not take care of my mental health, like my body started to react in really weird ways and having to go to the doctors and stuff to figure out what's wrong. So I've been very cognizant and ensuring that I'm taking care of my mental health too, and taking breaks when I need to, and I feel like I always have to be involved in every single thing, every single day. So top ones there.
For that, and I think that's one of the upsides, if there's such a thing for COVID, is that it's really showed us all how important physical and mental health is, especially when we don't have each other and we don't have anybody to reach out to. Did the party help you at all? The Democratic Party help you? And it doesn't seem like you had a lot of help from the party structure. And how did that impact things? Obviously, it probably impacted with funding, but did they ever connect you with anybody at the party level or not?
No.
Didn't seem like it. It just seemed like you were kind of out there doing your own thing.
So
it's kind of unfortunate.
I don't want to blame it on the party, the entire party, because how it works, like so you have different groups, right? We all know this. So the only people who can receive a nomination from the party is the gubernatorial candidate, the AG, Secretary of State, and the Supreme Court candidates, and the chair of the Democratic Party for our state. I don't know if I missed anybody, but I know it says governor, again, AG, Secretary of State, and the Supreme Court candidates.
So just the major races, basically.
The major races now.
That's different than Connecticut, yeah.
Yeah, so for the congressional races, or for state rep races, or for city races, you can reach, say for example, we had the 13th and 14th congressional districts. They both had their own groups, right? I can apply for an endorsement from the 13th congressional district, or I can apply for an endorsement from the 14th congressional district, or I can apply for an endorsement from the Progressive Caucus or the Young Dems of Michigan. But every organization has their own way of endorsing candidates, or their own things they're looking for, or policy stances. So in that way, you can apply for different endorsements or help, you sort of say, but it's not like an entire party thing. So, but the people want to help me? No, of course they don't want to help me. I'm this young Black girl in Detroit causing all this ruckus and running for positions and like scaring folks because I have a large following with the young people and they need my help with young people. So of course they didn't really want to help me, but I had a lot of like secret support. People like, so, oh my God, you're going to be great and we really support you, but we can't support you publicly and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, I expected it. I'm not really upset with people or holding grudges. It's just the name of the game. Like,
the other thing that I noticed that was really depressing to me as a League of Women Voter person was the turnout rates. Like, what was it, 14% or something for the mayor? I think the race that you were in, there was such a low level of turnout.
That's a high turnout for us.
I know, but that's still really, that's so crazy, right? I mean, that would be so, I mean, it's a math thing, right? So we're always about it. The League of Women Voters, we're all about turnout. We don't care how you vote, just vote, you know? So how can you, what can we do about that? How can organizations like ours and other folks who are interested in getting people out there, what do you think is some of the keys to helping people turn out? Because I know apathy is tough. It's tough to overcome. But what do you think are some of the ways that we can help folks turn out next time?
For Detroit specifically, a lot of folks, again, I mentioned this earlier, we don't have a lot of faith in politics because we've just been so disenfranchised for so long. So one thing that really works is when you have a candidate that people actually care about. So for this past election, they did not at all advertise the election, the candidates, or anything in the city or the major newspapers a lot, besides the mayor and the deputy mayor, Connie Kilpatrick, because they didn't want to spark any kind of like excitement surrounding my campaign, specifically me and the young Black girl who ran for mayor. Because the first time I ran, as you see, it caused so much noise that I'm in an entire documentary, but I wasn't on the ballot. So I guess their way of controlling at this time is people really didn't know if the election was happening. There was really no advertisement. So one thing that people can do is more voter education on the different type of elections that's happening. And then two, a way that people can really know the candidates who are going to be on the ballot and access their information. One thing I did get a lot from the last campaign is people were saying like, oh, we didn't know who was running for office. I'm like, Google is there. Everyone, for the most part, had a website. So I don't really know like where the disconnect is. I think a lot of things is people just want information readily available to them and quick and easy. So figuring out, okay, how can we make information more accessible to them? Because that's what we do at Google, is making data universally accessible to everyone is like our motto. It's something to that effect. But like, how do we ensure that data is accessible to people? Because again, we have websites and we have our information out there, but people can't easily find it. So how can we make it more findable for them? And then two, for candidates, like you said before, like raising money for us, that's a big thing so that we can pay people to help us canvass and pay people to help us spread the word about our campaigns. Because if we don't have that ground game actually wins. My ground game is what made me so successful in all my campaigns. I didn't have a lot of money. I have never done a mailer, y'all. I don't know if y'all believe me, but I have never done a mailer in all of my campaigns. The day I do a mailer, I would probably cry because I'm like, oh my God, I actually have a mailer going out. But we just knocked doors. We printed out the pamphlets or the flyers. They're not called flyers. Oh my God, the flyers and whatever. And then
cards, door hangers, all of that kind of stuff. There's a word.
It's so great right now, but we just knock doors. We knock doors. Yeah. We have door hangers. We have everything, and we talk to people. And that's how I really gained a lot of my support, is through knocking doors and having a bunch of young people who believed in me coming out to really help with my campaign. And that was like the fuel and the engine of it. It's other young folks who want to make a difference, who have a chance to make a difference and be a part of a campaign. And not even just like being a part, like just come knock doors with me. No, I ask them questions. I let them think of new and innovative ideas for the campaign, so that we can just be different and set ourselves apart too. So yeah.
When you put when they put the movie together, did you ever meet the other two women that were in the movie? Did you guys all get together and have coffee or something like that?
No, we were supposed to, but then everything got canceled.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Yeah, that time is so awful.
Everything. We were
'Cause
supposed to have, it was April 2020. We were supposed to we were supposed to go to a film festival. I forgot where it was. We were supposed to go and meet each other for the first time, and we never got a chance to do that. Like, we always talk about, okay, when COVID and stuff goes down, and restrictions go away, we'll meet. But we haven't had a chance to, unfortunately. Today's Hillary's birthday too, so I'm gonna text her happy birthday. Like, okay, when are we gonna find obviously we know Hillary, but the other candidates too. But they've all been so great.
Well, we're lucky in Connecticut because we have, voter education is really one of the things we do. And it's one of those things that we found, especially during COVID, how many folks in Connecticut did not understand how our election process even worked.
Yeah.
How to get an absentee ballot, how to, we have an application process and all of these things. And so we spent a lot of our time, as did our local league members and others, and other groups that we work with, like Common Cause, the NAACP, we all got together because suddenly we couldn't do what you were talking about. We couldn't go door to door. We couldn't make those personal connections that we used to do in person, registering voters and things like that. And we had to turn everything into something that could either be shared on social media or something that could be a website or whatever. But it was interesting because we found that people, if they don't know enough about something, they're not going to participate in it. Right? They want to feel smart about it. So they need to have all the information. So we've tried to be really clear about most of the stuff that we try to do. It's factual, it's nonpartisan. It's like, this is just the facts. We don't really, like I said, we don't care how you vote, just turn out, because our democracy is so, I think we've seen how fragile it is when we're not all represented. I can't remember what the statistic is, but there's a percentage where even now, even though the country is, half this and half that, we're still overly represented by white older men. Most of us are still represented by white older men throughout the country, even though the country doesn't look like that anymore. And it's younger people, and it's people of color, and it's women. And it's just kind of amazing how we're still in that grind. And as we can see how tough it is for people to give up that power and to let others in. But we need to keep breaking down those walls and shattering that glass every time we can, every thing that we get. And we have in Connecticut, we have the Yale Campaign School, which I don't know if you know about that. It's kind of neat. It basically teaches women for a very reasonable fee, tuition fee. It teaches women how to run. And they have courses on how to make a speech, how to ask for money, which is big, and all of those things, so that they're equipped to go out there and have the courage and have the skills set to go and do and make that happen for them and to get elected. And we also have, even at the 8th grade level, I just participated in this great program called Ms. President, where girls that are younger girls in 8th grade and even elementary school, I believe, Amanda's out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're putting together campaigns, and they gave speeches and they got awards. And it was just kind of getting people used to this idea that everybody can do this. It just takes a little bit of gumption, if you will, and definitely you got to be brave, but you also have to believe in it. And I think that's what's really, that your story came through, as far as this is, full steam ahead. Don't let anybody question what you do. That's really the motto that I learned from your story. Just keep doing it. I want to do it. I don't care. I'm doing it. And just, ask, it's like always, it's better to ask forgiveness than ask permission, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. One thing that I always tell people too, because I've done like numerous training programs with like Emily's List or the Black Campaign School with the Collective PAC. Even like local ones here with, like, I don't know if you heard of like Michigan United. I've done so many campaign schools, and I tell people all the time, sometimes, or for at least for me being a Black woman, a young Black woman, not just a Black woman, a young Black woman, you can go to all the campaign schools you want to, but you have to change people's belief systems and understanding that young Black women have the ability to lead. And that's what's been the hardest thing. I don't think I have an issue raising money because I don't know how to ask for money. Because I ask for money for other stuff and people give it to me really fast, right? But if I ask for money for me to become an elected official, people are more hesitant. So it's the reason why I constantly run too is so that even like young girls and kids like who see me doing this and their parents who say I inspire them, is so like you said before too, is like constantly doing this so I can program it in their head that you can do this too. So although they don't understand the concept of winning and not winning, honestly, little kids don't. They just know that you're doing it, right? So my whole thing is I constantly run so that I can keep my face out there as a young Black woman who's wants to make a difference so that other folks can believe they can do it too. So even if I'm not the first one to get it done or to be elected, I can make room and pave the way for somebody else. So that's what the whole goal is for me, is because again, I don't think people's belief system has been changed enough to where they believe that a young Black woman is able to lead. And then two, for me, this is just me telling the truth, y'all. I just feel like the longer time goes, it's like I'm almost 30 now, right? I'm closer to 30 than I was when I first started, and I was closer to 20. So at this point, my age is kind of like going to compensate for that. But I want folks to understand that, again, young people of color, specifically young women of color and Black women, young Black women, we are more than capable than doing half the work that people who are not doing work in these offices right now. Because a lot of folks get elected, they don't do anything. They just sit in office and collect a check. So if you have a bunch of young people in Silicon Valley starting these multi-billion-dollar companies in California, why wouldn't you think that young people know how to, run an office for city government? That's what I always tell folks. If young people can get entrusted with all these seed funds, because we're, again, more than capable, like what's the difference in, again, being elected on city council?
Right. And I think that it's the little, it seems different now. I think we have a young state senator, actually, Will Haskell, who I think he got elected when he was 23 or 24, believe it or not, to the state Senate. And the thing that's interesting is I think certain generations need to step up. And I really feel that millennials have a charge to step up a lot earlier than they would have liked because of certain, things on the ground. And they're certainly showing everybody else that age is really not an issue. And I was watching the Ben Franklin special that was on PBS the other night. Ben Franklin did some stuff when he was pretty young too, and nobody questioned it. People didn't live very long, but it was still this kind of idea that a young person can't possibly have a brilliant idea, and it's not correct. And it's that ageism kind of thing in reverse almost, right? I mean, we have, boomers have the opposite problem, but there's too many isms out there, and we need to really break down the walls to get rid of all of the isms, because smart people are smart people and they can do what they can do for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Myya. It's really great to meet you. And I don't think we have any other questions, unfortunately. Rachel, do you have any questions that I haven't covered? Just kind of looking around to see what our time is and stuff, because we're getting towards the hour.
I don't think so, but that was great. Thank you.
The other things, in addition to Myya's story, the other two stories dealt with Bryn Bird, who has small children while she's running, which she's breastfeeding in a meeting. It's not hysterical, but it's really informative, and it makes you realize how much that the childcare piece keeps women from running. And it's certainly, that's another thing that's changing generationally. I think we're getting a lot more enlightened in those departments. And Julie Cho, who was the one Republican in the mix, I was kind of felt bad for her because the party wasn't even helping her at all. And here she was really on her own and doing things. So I hope that people will watch this movie. It's a great group discussion movie. It's certainly a great film to watch, just to watch it and to see what goes on behind the fun stuff, the TV appearances and all that kind of stuff. There's so much work that goes into making a campaign just to run without even winning, let alone win. So it's really one of those things you got to keep your head down and keep going to get it done. But I'm really glad that you have that kind of courage, Myya, and I encourage anybody else to get out there and do the same. So this has been the League of Women Voters of Connecticut. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Really appreciate your time, and look for our information because we're going to be having a lot of information. It's a very important, 2022 is going to be a very busy election. We have an early voting question on the ballot this year that you're going to hear more about as we get closer to election season, that we really need a yes vote so that Connecticut can have more options to vote than just election day. We're one of the handful of states that still don't have an early voting option, believe it or not, even though we're progressive, we have a charter that's very restrictive that we need to fix so that we can get more opportunities for people to vote. Because when we do have more opportunities to vote, talk about turnout, our last election cycle, we had almost 80% turnout during a pandemic. So it can be done. And the more opportunities we give folks to vote, the more opportunities they'll turn out on their own convenience, not on election day, which is a lovely Tuesday, but it's not for everyone and not everybody can make it on that one day. So we hope you'll join us for anything else that we do. We have a lot of events coming up. Visit our webpage at lwbct.org. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a pleasant evening. Take care.